Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to InfoGamer, where we show you how to create awesome video games. Now, it's been a while since our last video, and so we want to apologize to all of you that have been waiting for us to put out another video and show you how to complete the game Doodle Jump. But we're planning on hopping back into it from where we left off. In the last video, we showed you how to code the different item pickups that we have in our game. But in this video, we're going to show you how to spawn or instantiate the groups of platforms that we've created in previous videos, and also how to make it so that when our main character jumps on a platform, those platforms all move down together, making it look like our main character is getting higher and higher as he jumps on the platforms. So here we have Unity opened, and the first thing that we'll need to do is go to our prefabs folder, where we'll show you the different groups of platforms that we've created. So right now we have 4 different groups of platforms, but for those of you that are watching this video, you're going to want to have a lot more groups of platforms to give your game variety. And we suggest that you create groups that are easy, and then groups that are medium, and groups that are hard, and groups that are very hard, all the way up to the point where it's pretty much impossible for anyone to get any farther than those groups up there. But I'm going to go ahead and drag one of our groups into our scene view, and you can see that the main object is an empty game object, and then underneath it we've attached our platform game objects. And these are just sprite objects, and they have a 2D box collider and then our platform script that we've written in a previous video. So if you don't remember us making these groups, you can go back. We'll put a link in the description below to the correct video where you will learn where to or how to create these groups. Once you've created a good variety of platforms, you can go on to the next step where we'll start coding the platforms being instantiated into our scene. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this group, and then we'll go over to mono develop, and we have our game controller script and our main character script open. Now there's a whole bunch of variables that we had to create in order to make this functionality of our game. And all these variables here are the new variables that we need to use. So if you want, you can go ahead and pause the video and look at these more closely. But to save on time, I won't explain all of the variables right now, but I'll explain them as we go. So the first function that you're going to need to create is the function to instantiate 2 different groups of platforms into your scene view at the beginning of our game. And so I'll scroll down to the function that I've written, and it's right here. I've called it first group function, and it's a void function, and then inside we have a randomizer. And so this ran variable is one of our new variables, and it's just an integer. And then we set it equal to random.range, and then we have 2 more integers, and this will be the easy min and the max min. Now the easy min is just going to be 0, and if you want, you can actually just leave that variable out and put 0. And the easy max is going to be the number of easy groups that we've created for our game. And so right now I only have 4 different groups that I've created, and so I'm going to save the number 4 in this integer variable. The next line of code is where we instantiate one of our 4 game objects into our scene view, and we save it into a variable that we've called current group. And this is just a game object variable. And so we say current group equals instantiate, and then we need to select which of the prefabs we are going to instantiate. And so we have this variable called easy groups, which is an array. And an array is signified by these brackets. And you can see in the variables that we have above that we've put these brackets here. And that specifies that this variable is going to be an array. An array makes it so that you can save multiple objects or data into one single array, and then you select which object you want out of that array by giving it an index or a number. And so we call our easy groups, and inside the brackets we specify which of the groups we want to spawn, and we use the rand integer variable to specify that. So in this first line of code we select index at random on which of the prefabs we want to spawn in our game. Then we spawn it at the starting group tran, which is a transform for the location of, it's really just 0, 0. And we actually save the background object into this transform. We get the background's transform because the background's at 0, 0, and we save it in this transform. And so essentially we're getting the position 0, 0, 0, and then we're getting that rotation, which is also 0. Then we put as game object. That's because we're saving this into our current group. Then we want to do it again, and so we call ran and we set it equal to a random number between easymin and easymax. Then we save it into another game object variable which we've called next group. And so next group will always be the up and coming group. So current group is for the ones that we can see in our scene view or our game view, and then the next group are the ones that will be in the game view next. And so we do the same thing. We instantiate a random prefab of which group we want, and then we spawn it or instantiate it at a new transform which we've called top spawn tran, and we want the position and then we want the rotation, and then we say as game object. Next we want to set the next group variable as a child to our current group. That way when we move our current group, the next group will move with it. And so we say next group dot transform dot set parent, and then we want to get the transform of our current group. So we say current group dot transform. And for the final line of code for this function, we want to set the starting platform as a child to our current group as well. So as you can see in Unity, we have this platform here, and this will be the starting platform. So our Doodle Jump character always has a platform to jump on. And so we want to make this game object a child to the current group. And so we say starting platform dot transform dot set parent, and then inside parentheses we say current group dot transform. That's all the code that we need for this first group function. Now we want to call this function in our onEnable function. So up above where we have onEnable, we say first group function and then parentheses and semicolon. This will make it so that it'll run through this function every time our game level is loaded. The next part of our game that we want to code is the movement of our platforms. This is when our main character jumps on a platform, all the platforms move downward together at the same speed. Now to do this, we want to go over to our main character feat script. And in this script, we want to note that in a previous video, we've already created the variable controller, which is our game controller script. Now we're going to need this to reference a couple variables that we have in our game controller script. So in the onTriggerEnter2D function that we have for the main character feat script, under the if statement other.tag equals platform, we need to set these variables. So we'll call the controller, and then we'll say dot last object jumped, and we want to set that equal to the other.gameObject. This makes it so that when our main character jumps on a platform, whichever platform that is saved into a specific variable in our game controller script. Next, we'll want to call the controller script again. Then we say toLerpDiff. Now this is going to be the difference between the current platform that our main character jumped on and the safe zone at the bottom of our screen, or the safe transform at the bottom of our screen. Now this will be the position where every platform will lerp to after our main character jumps on it. That way we always have one platform at the bottom of our screen that our main character can jump on for a second time, and it doesn't disappear off the bottom of the screen and then the main character loses, or the player loses because the main character didn't have another platform or the same platform to jump on. So the toLerpDiff is a float variable, and we want to set that equal to controller.lastObjectJumped, or you could just say other.transform.position.y, because we want to get the y, the height of that platform. Then we want to subtract it from controller.lowestTransformPosition.y. This will give us the difference between the current platform and that bottom transform. Then we want to get the distance that we want the top platform to lerp to. To do this, we want to call our toLerp variable, which is a vector3. So we'll say controller.toLerp, then equals new vector3. For the x, it will be 0. For the y, we want to say controller.currentGroup.transform.position.y. This gets the y position of the current group variable. Then we want to subtract the controller.toLerpDiff. Then the z we want to set to equal to 0. Once you've done that, you can go back to the controller script. Now in the game controller script, we have another function which we've called groupMoveFunction. And inside it, we say currentGroup.transform.position. Then we say equals vector3.lerp. And inside this lerp, we want to say currentGameObject.transform.position. This is the current position of our current group GameObject. Then we want to lerp it to the toLerp variable, which is the vector3 that we just created. So we say comma, then toLerp, and then comma, and we want to put the speed. So we put this variable, which is, I believe, an integer. No, it's a float. So toSpeed times time dot delta time. That makes it so that we can set how fast we want the platforms to move down inside the inspector of Unity. Once we've created this function, we'll need to call it in the update function. And so in the update function, underneath our if statements, we've added the groupMoveFunction, parentheses, and then semicolon. Now the last functionality that we want to add to our game for this lesson is the continuous spawning of a new group. As the next group becomes the current group, we want to spawn a new group inside the next variable. And so to do this, we'll create a new function, and we've called it void new group. Now inside this function, we have quite a bit of code that can be pretty confusing. So if you'll stick with me and maybe watch this portion a couple times over, hopefully it will become more clear. So the first thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to make our next group not a child of our current group. So previously we set the next group as a child of our current group, and because we're going to be deleting our current group or destroying our current group because it's below the game view, we want to make sure that our next group isn't deleted with it. And so to do this, we'll say nextGroup.transform.setParent, and then we'll say null inside parentheses. Once we've done that, we'll need to destroy the current group. And so we say destroy, and then in parentheses we say current group. Now that we've destroyed the current group, we want to set the current group variable equal to the next group game object. And so we say current group equals next group. Now we need to select a random index for instantiating a new group above the now current group. And so we say ran.equals random.range, and then we have easy min and easy max. That's the same as we did earlier. Then we say next group equals instantiate, and then easy group, and we put the index, and then we say top spawn tran because we're spawning it above the game view. Then we say dot position, and then we want the rotation as well, and we say as game object. Now that we have a new current group and a new next group, we want to set the next group as a child to the current group, because the current group's what's moving, and we want the next group and the current group to move together. So we say next group dot transform dot set parent, and then in parentheses we say current group dot transform. But now that we've done that, our group move function will be messed up because the current group isn't what it used to be, and it's now higher than what it was, and so it's going to lerp a lot faster in order to get to the toLerp, and it won't look natural, and so we have to reset the toLerp variable. And so to do that, we'll say toLerp diff is equal to last object jumped, so we want to get that platform that was the last one that we jumped on, and then say dot transform dot position dot y, and then we minus lowest tran dot position dot y. Then we say toLerp equals new vector 3, we put 0, and then we say current group dot transform dot position dot y minus toLerp diff, and then for the z we put 0, and we close it off. This will make it so that there's no jump and it all moves smoothly and consistently. Now the last thing that we need to do is we need to call this new group function in our update function, but we don't want to call it just any old time. We want to call it at a specific point in our game, and that is when our next group's y position is at the location of 0. It's less than or equal to 0. So in our updates function we say if next group dot transform dot y position dot y is less than or equal to 0, and if it is, then we call our new group function. Now a little explanation for this to make it more clear. We have our current group and our next group, which is above it. Our current group is currently at 0 in the Y position. As our main character jumps on platforms, our current group and our next group will move down simultaneously at the same speed. Then, as the next group in the Y position becomes 0 or less than 0, our current group will be entirely off the game scene view, and so we won't need it anymore. That's why we'll then call our new group function, which will destroy the current group. Then it'll reset the next group as the current group. Then we'll spawn a new group above the now current group and call that next group. But now that we have all that coded, it's time to go back to Unity. We'll need to plug in a couple variables, and then we'll show you what it does. So here in Unity, we'll click on our game controller script, and you can see all the variables here. So first we have our easy group array, and we've set the size to 4, and then we've dragged in our 4 different prefabs that we've created of different platform groups. Then we don't need to set anything for current group and next group because we set those equal to different things in our code. Then we have our starting platform, which is this platform here in our scene view, and you can just drag that in from our hierarchy right here. Then we have our last jump platform, and we've set that equal to the starting platform, so you'll drag the same platform in, but that's going to change over time. Then we have our ran variable, which is an integer. We will set that equal to 0 because it'll change over time as well. And our easy min is 0, and then for our easy max variable, we'll set that equal to the number of groups that we have in our easy group array. So our size is equal to 4, so easy max will be equal to 4. For our starting group tran, this will be the transform for our background because we want it to be 0, 0, 0. So what I've done is I've just clicked on our background object in our hierarchy and dragged it into our variable. If your background isn't at 0, 0, you can create an empty game object and put its transform at 0, 0, 0 and then drag it in. We also have our game controller object at 0, 0, 0. So if you want to, you could just drag that in, or in your code you could say this game object dot transform dot position. Then for our top spawn, we've created a new empty game object right here in our hierarchy, and the position for this object is 10.29 above 0. But what I've done is I've clicked on our background and then I duplicated it and moved it up until the bottom of that game object was lined up with the top of this background. And then I deleted the sprite renderer on that top spawn, and then I renamed it top spawn. And so that's that variable. Then the lower transform is just another empty game object that we've positioned on top of or at the same location as our starting platform. So we don't want any platforms to go lower than this if it was the last platform jumped on. But once I jump on another platform, that will then become the current platform and move down to that, moving the last platform before that down below our scene view. That's a little confusing and kind of wordy, sorry about that. But next, for our speed down variable, we've put 3 because we felt like that was a good speed for our platforms. You can experiment with that as you play and change it, see what it does, have a little fun. Then your toLERP different and your toLERP you don't need to do anything with because that will update in your code as you play the game. So now that we've dragged all those variables in or set them equal to a number or anything, it's time to play and see what our code has created. So you can see that I now have a new group of platforms in our game view, and above it I have another group. So let's see here, group 4, and inside group 4 we have group 2. So group 2 is this up above, which is a child of group 4, which is this group down below. Now as I move our main character onto a platform, you'll see that all the platforms move down together, and as the current group gets to that position where it's at 0 in the Y direction, it destroys the one down below and it spawns a new one up above. So in the future, we'll show you how to make it so that the platforms get more difficult over time. But this concludes this portion of our playlist on how to recreate the game Doodle Jump. We hope you guys had fun, and we hope it wasn't too confusing. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave them in the comments below, and we'll make sure that we respond. And we hope that you stay tuned for all our future videos down below our scene view. That's a little confusing and kind of wordy, sorry about that. But next, for our speed down variable, we've put 3 because we felt like that was a good speed for our platforms. You can experiment with that as you play and change it, see what it does, have a little fun. Then your toLERP different and your toLERP you don't need to do anything with because that will update in your code as you play the game. So now that we've dragged all those variables in or set them equal to a number or anything, it's time to play and see what our code has created. So you can see that I now have a new group of platforms in our game view, and above it I have another group. So let's see here, group 4, and inside group 4 we have group 2. So group 2 is this up above, which is a child of group 4, which is this group down below. Now as I move our main character onto a platform, you'll see that all the platforms move down together, and as the current group gets to that position where it's at 0 in the Y direction, it destroys the one down below and it spawns a new one up above. So in the future, we'll show you how to make it so that the platforms get more difficult over time. But this concludes this portion of our playlist on how to recreate the game Doodle Jump. We hope you guys had fun, and we hope it wasn't too confusing. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave them in the comments below, and we'll make sure that we respond. And we hope that you stay tuned for all our future videos.